Good morning. Okay, so Vaughn, Meyer, our RCAF Checkoff Committee Chairman, and I are going to talk about what has kind of become a really passionate subject, especially this last year, and that being the checkoff. You know, last year at convention, I know it was kind of kicked off the National Checkoff Petition campaign. And so I want to give you an update of where we've come from the last convention. We all know that in spring of 2020, South Dakota Livestock Marketing Association, and a number of passionate individuals from across the country spearheaded this petition campaign. And you know, they had best intentions, but they needed to swell the Army, and so that's when RCAF came on board. And by fall, we started meeting with our checkoff committee almost every Wednesday night, and I really appreciate the individuals who through the last year have sacrificed a lot of time away from their families in those evenings to strategize, to update, to fuel others, to go out and get signatures and kind of spread our base. There have been challenges along the way, and most of that comes from just a lack of producer awareness about the checkoff. And as Dave Wright has touched on in his presentations, especially when producers are not in a brand area and possibly not paying the checkoff, they don't know what it is, and they don't know anything about the checkoff program or why we're working to reform it. There were some wins in this checkoff petition campaign that couldn't be seen from the road, so to speak. And one of those was how many producers just really came on board and got involved in the fight. And what you couldn't see from maybe your part of the world was the number of individuals, the number of volunteers who are spending a large amount of time at their local sale barns, collecting signatures, perhaps in the sale barn lobby, at county fairs, at rodeos, at anywhere producers were gathering, making sure that they had petitions packed along in the pickup when they went to brandings or went to the neighbors, or producers that even just got in the pickup on Sunday afternoons and just drove to every neighbor's house and just said, "Have you signed the checkoff petition?" And so those were the stories that I got the privilege of getting those phone calls, and it's really what kept me going through the year. Every time my phone would ring and somebody would say, "Karina, I got another, 15 or 150 signatures at the sale barn this week." And I wish that you all could have heard those calls, because it really was what kept me going week to week when sometimes this mountain looked like it was so big to climb. We also then realized we needed some funding to help perpetuate this campaign, and we had an incredibly successful calf sale rollover that you've heard me talk about. And the big win in that for me wasn't the amount of money we raised, but the fact that we collected donations from 16 states. There were 16 states represented in that fundraiser, and we threw that baby together like in 8 days. But that was the swelling of support that was coming out of our producer base on this topic. So then through the winters, we realized that people weren't really going to that online petition like we thought they would for whatever reason, and we were going to really have to hit the pavement harder in collecting hard copy petitions. We went a couple different strategies on getting petitions into producers' homes. And one of those strategies was using some publications like Tri-State Livestock News, Farmer Rancher Exchange, Fence Post, and then a publication up in the northeast part of the country called Farm Shine that serves a large dairy audience. And that worked really well. Those dairy producers are very in tune to this subject and very in tune to checkoff reform. And so that also led to an interesting win and collaboration was with dairy producers. And Mike Eby from the National Dairy Producers Organization, him and I strategized quite a bit. How can we link in our dairy producers into this? Because those guys really have it rough. They pay not one, but 2 checkoffs. They pay their dairy checkoff, and then they pay their beef checkoff. And so those dairy producers have really become linked right up with us on this reform campaign. So there were wins, even though we know that on the 1st of July, we came up significantly short on the amount of signatures. Now, the USDA has granted us a 60-day extension, so now our new deadline is October 3rd. And while I know that seems like it's right at the front door, and it is, and it seems like a big mountain, we put our heads together and we just said, we're not going to stop. We're going to take this baby right to the finish line, and it'll be what it'll be on October 3rd, but we are not going to stop. Now, so a couple of things that comes into importance in this next 45 days, and we cannot rely on adding signatures. It's time to rely on the power of multiplication, okay, because we've got a lot of ground to cover in 45 days. And so if those of you watching on Cattle USA, those of you in this room, you have got to think about multiplying yourselves. You've got to go out and find 6, 10 neighbors that are going to go out and find 6 to 10 signatures, and they're going to find people in their cattle industry network to go out and do the same thing rather quickly. It's really all on us at this point, and we have reached out to some other groups as well, and we're hoping that they're going to get to pushing this to their membership outside of, the RCAF membership. It can be done. It can be done, but we've got to get our feet in motion, and definitely need more signatures outside of this upper Midwest region, and need help getting more education and visibility about this petition into some other regions. Another announcement that I've got to make, because I've gotten some feedback, especially this week, is please look at the address on the RCAF website, or give me a call to make sure you have it right. Please do not send them to the Pratt address anymore, because they're not getting to Billings, and it's a postal issue. They're not getting forwarded. They're getting sent back to the sender. If you send in a wad of petitions and you want to make sure that our Billings office got them, give them a call and double check and make sure they got them. That's fine. Sorry to create more work for Carrie, but she loves talking to you too. So, but yeah, this is kind of come up a couple times this week that we've had some of those returned to senders. So we're working to get ahead of that. With that, so now we know what we got to do. We've got 45 days. Get the irons hot, get out there, multiply ourselves, multiply the effort, and tell everybody, there's some sales in September. Don't cut ourselves short. That deadline is right before the big part of the fall run. Take every opportunity to get in front of producers. I have stood in more sale barn lines. I've froze my fingers collecting signatures, and I tell you what, the best part about doing it that way is I hardly ever get told no. You get that petition underneath producers' eyes, and I have a 99% signage rate. They just not enough producers know about it. Okay, and so don't be scared of the process at all. It's energizing. I love it. I love going out and collecting the signatures and giving the men and women who are alongside of me in the cattle industry a chance to exercise their voice. I just love that. With that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Vaughn, because he wants to update you about another route of checkoff reform that he is passionate about and very knowledgeable about. So Vaughn Meyer, our Checkoff committee member, or chairman.
Thank you. Good morning. Glad to see so many people here today. Karina has done an awful lot of work, and I really can't say that anybody has worked harder on this checkoff than she has. Let's give her a good round of applause.
I have a pretty good partner and inspiration.
And I'm going to introduce the OFT Act to you, and just because I'm introducing that doesn't mean that we feel that we're done on the referendum by any means, and I will get to that after the OFT Act here. The OFT Act is the Opportunities for Fairness in Farming Act, and it was resubmitted this year by Representative Titus from Nevada. And it was actually released, we were in Washington with the OCM, and it was released at our conference. Two of the people that worked really hard to get this act introduced again this year is Mike Eby, sitting back there. Stand up, Mike, so everybody can see who you are. And Marty Irby. He is not here today with us, but he's got a pretty good insight to Capitol Hill, and he's worked on that. And since then, we've got a lot of co-sponsors on there. What the act is, did they bring it up? It's up on both sides. It's up there for you to read and look through it. I'll kind of go through it with you a little bit here, but my version might be just a little different. It is a board shall not enter, it's dealing with all checkoffs, not just the beef. A board shall not enter into any agreement or contract to carry out a checkoff program activities with a party that engages in activities for the purpose of influencing government policy or action that relates to agriculture. That is the main part of that thing, that government policy. Our number one contractor, I sat on the Cattlemen's Beef Board, and I've sat on my state beef councils, and I have seen just too many flaws in that deal, and that's the main thing that'll help if we can get that through. There's some other things in there. The main thing on the contractor is, one of the biggest flaws is, you know a contractor is probably in it for themselves rather than for you guys in your industry. When 82% of their budget, if you look on the 1099, comes from their contracting work with the Cattlemen's Beef Board, and 86% of the contracts go to that one group, and 5 others get what's left over, the scraps on the deal on there. Also on that contractor, and this isn't in my speech, but I'll throw it out there. If you look at those contracts that they offer on that, they get for years 38 to 42%, which figures averages at 40% implementation fees for working that deal. All the other 5 people on that contract use a flat 20% rate, which I think is standard in this country on there. So that's the first indication something's up there. Number 2, the conflict of interest. The board shall not engage in and shall prohibit their employees and agents of the board acting in their official capacity from engaging in any act that may involve a conflict of interest. And in that part, I've seen many examples of that. We had our president and vice president, while I was on the board, go to a national organization convention and try and convince them to drop their policy that they were trying to adopt that day. That's just plain flat out. We had 3 of our contractors in there, or 2 of them, and a subcontractor that signed on with the coalition of people that killed cool, that took away 50% of your income, about $20 million out of our industry a year on there. Number 3, a board shall not engage in and shall prohibit the employees and agents of the board acting in their official capacity from engaging in A, any anti-competitive activity, B, any unfair or deceptive act or practice, and C, any act that may be disparaging or negatively portray another agricultural commodity or product. In this case, that number C has kind of been in there because this deals with all checkoffs. During the pork, if you remember right, pork had the big campaign, the other white meat in there. Well, some of those pork producers produce dark meat. And there's 2 types of meat in the pork industry, so that's what's kind of why that's in there on that part. And number 4, not later than 2 years after the enactment of this act and not less frequency than every 5 years thereafter, the Inspector General of the Department of Ag shall conduct an audit of each checkoff program to determine the compliance of each program with this section. And that is something that's been needed for a long time. You remember back in 2010 when they had an audit, and they've come up paying over $300,000 after two attempts in there to cover things like putting travel expenses for the CEO of NCBA's wife and child to, I believe it was New Zealand, Australia, and some conventions over there and stuff like that. And Forrest Roberts got a loan for a house that since then, when they've asked USDA about it, they said, well, that's been dropped a long time ago. You know, that was just a one-time deal on it. You know, I didn't realize our checkoff was in the loan business, but it's there. And I guess there's things like the audits need to be, when I was on the Beef Council, we used to get audited when I first got on there almost every year, if not every other year. And it got so lax that you all saw what happened down in Oklahoma. Gal helped herself to it for, 5 to 7 years on that deal. So it's time that we audit and find out what's really going on this thing here. What can you do? This has been introduced in the House. It hasn't been introduced in the Senate yet. Senator Lee from Utah has picked it up last year, but he hasn't done anything yet. I understand that he has a new gal in this area, and she's not totally interested in it. So I would suggest everybody give his office a call and ask him to do it. Also call your own senators and put the pressure on to maybe they'd like to co-sponsor it and help Senator Lee out with this. Senator Lee's number is 202-228-1168, and I'll give you that out at the end here too, so have your pens ready again on there. Back to our referendum. I just can't say thanks enough to all the people that helped in there. First off, I want to thank Brian Hansen and Steve Stratford. They were the two of the individuals in LMA that stood up and got this ball rolling. And RCAF decided to step in and pick it up from there and go. Karina, I've already mentioned, we can't thank her enough for her drive, and she's continuing, and we're all going to continue right behind her in her leadership. Laurel, Candace, and Jaden, thank you for all your help in the office. Bill, thanks for yours too on there. And I want to thank all of you out there that worked and went down to your sale barns, went to your neighbors and everything, and all of you that are watching today. We really appreciate it. We couldn't have got off first base without you folks on there. So go back to where we were. Why would anybody want a checkoff referendum? I mean, isn't the checkoff rolling along pretty darn good, working for you? Maybe the first and main reason would be 35 years without a vote. 50% of you out there probably have never voted on this, but you're paying on this checkoff. Can you imagine if all of us got to vote for our president or our senators or even our governors every 35 years, what would happen in this industry on there? It was set up in the act and the order that we, with 10% of the people, we could request a referendum. Nobody's going to try it. So I hand it to RCAF and Steve and Brian and them for getting busy and at least getting this off the ground. You know, it's just one of them things that would never happen if some individuals didn't step up to the plate. On where your checkoff is, have you seen your checkoff out there advertising against fake meat? Or fake meat is probably your biggest competitor in the future coming here. They're probably going to eat our lunch. I hate to even use the term meat behind them. I think it's illegal that they're using that, but it is what it is. You know, our checkoff was developed for cattle. It was a cattleman that developed the checkoff. And along with not being able to advertise fake beef, it's been hijacked along the way by the beef industry, by the packers, and they use your dollar for every bit to satisfy themselves and advertise the beef. And the cattle part of the thing has been left behind on there. The other thing is, where's the transparency in your checkoff? Have you ever been able to see where the checks are written or anything like that. You are the payer. Even your checkoff brags to you that it is your checkoff and that you're the owner of your checkoff on there. OCM in 2013 filed for a FOIA request to see those all the transactions and stuff on there. Didn't get any answer out of them. 2014 we filed a suit to try and get it, and it went along. We finally had a judge that was really working on it, and everything just died, went quiet. We can't even get an answer where they're at or what's going on. So transparency is another very important thing that should go in your checkoff. And under the OFF Act, with more investigations of it, I think there'll also be more transparency down the road there. Last of all, does your checkoff, anything you do in your daily life, you have access to your senators and your House of Representatives, whether it's at the state level or whether it's at the national level. And on your checkoff, most all organizations, because a lot of them are policy organizations, have access to the one way or another to the Senate on Capitol Hill or whatever, and the House. Do you have access? The Act and the Order says that the board, the Cattlemen's Beef Board itself, can recommend changes to the checkoff, and those changes will be submitted to the Secretary of Ag. And then the Secretary of Ag can recommend them to the Senate, because the Senate makes all the changes on them. Do you have access to the Secretary of Ag? Will the Cattlemen's Beef Board do the job for you? Have they ever suggested changes in? They never would suggest any changes that I and some others had asked for when we were setting on it. Also, your Secretary of Ag, is he really an independent Secretary of Ag, or is there a conflict of interest there? That's a guy that, between his last term and this term, worked for a checkoff. $1 million a year for 4 years before he came back on there. So we really don't. A new checkoff design should have some sort of approach to your Congress and that, and it should not have to go three chains through on the deal. I'd like to say a few things about what I saw yesterday here, and it was a very good day, very good speakers, and to kind of remind you folks. Tracy Hunt, one of the things he said, and talking about us in general, he said, "This is a big deal and I'm going to be part of it. This referendum is going to keep going, and I'm asking every one of you to join in, and let's show them what we can really do in 45 days. If we use Karina's plan and we go out there and contact 6 to 10 people, and they go take a petition and get 6 to 10 signatures and get 6 to 10 more people in there, this thing will expound real quickly. And we're all going to have to do it. This is one of our only chances to take care of this checkoff and get it back to the cattle industry rather than the beef industry." He also said, "Are we going to fight about this, or are we going to die?" And I, for one, am going to fight. I'm not going to give up at all. In fact, the words I would use, Max would probably kick me off the podium here, so I won't say them all. But he also mentioned in there, one of the things we need to do is organize resistance to the media. Do you realize that your checkoff is the media? It's the media that you get. When they say that every dollar you invest is at one time was $3, it was up to $11.20 the last time. I think Bill Voller and I defuted that when we came out with our piece of through the imports into that mix in there, that it was probably, I think if I remember right, about a minus $331 or something like that per head on the deal. In fact, I sat in on a meeting with that doctor from Cornell University, and one of the questions I shot to him on him is, I said, "Does your plan, did it ever include imports?" And he fired right back there on the deal. We don't include imports. They don't belong to us. Well, imports are doing it. Has your checkoff ever fought against imports? Would a new checkoff be able to fight against imports? Should the import people have ever been included in your checkoff? I would suggest that the meat industry, both the imports and the packers, if they want to promote meat, they should pay their own way and have their own. A cattle us as cattlemen should have our own checkoff by ourselves. If we choose to help them out in programs, then we can join in on their programs on that, on the thing. Harriet Hagman said yesterday, they don't care if what they do is legal. They care if they can get away with it. And that sums up our whole checkoff right there. They have the attitude that they are in control and that we will listen. Margaret Byfield said, our job is to fight. Victory will be brought by the Lord. And it can be said any better than that. We've got 43 days, and we need to get out there and really fight for everything. And I thank you. And at this... Do we want to award first?
We're actually way ahead of schedule, so we
more.
can have some audience participation, Vaughn, unless
Okay.
you have some other ideas.
Sounds good.
Does anybody have any questions for Vaughn, since he is our deep well of checkoff knowledge here? Any questions about the checkoff, the petition campaign, strategy ideas? Okay, John.
Are we going to have to be real careful about duplications, getting somebody to sign more than once, or what's going to happen? I know that's going to happen, but what's going to, is there going to be some bad stuff happen if that happens?
It's a very good question. Definitely you need to ask people, make sure they haven't already signed on there. Another thing, when you're out there with your list, getting names and stuff, check to make sure they fill in all the blanks. Pretty much everything on that list needs to be filled except for your email address. That's not necessary, but they need the phone numbers. They need the signature besides the printed name on there. And make sure everybody does kind of glance at it and make sure they do it right, because we're afraid that if one person out of 6 messes up, they might throw the whole sheet out on us on that thing.
Yes, make sure that when you are collecting signatures, all fields in those 2 lines are filled in, because we're watching them as a staff as they come in, and we're trying to catch ones that are incomplete. And then the other thing that John said, we have no intentions of wanting anybody to duplicate their signature knowingly, so please don't encourage that. We want everything to be on the up and up. Nicole.
Excuse me, but one other quick thing is, if you have children and they have cattle and they sell cattle, if they're under the age of 18, make sure a parent signs too with them on that for them. Thank you.
About how many signatures do we need still?
Karina?
Okay, so we're just under the 30,000 mark collected, and we need to collect around 89,000.
Plus a few more to be safe.
If we're going to take these petitions out, Vaughn, do you have a list? Do you have a list of some of the things that corrupted the checkoff? Like, this is the first time I heard that they loaned money to one of the executives for a home loan.
I have lots and lots of.
Make that list, because people are going to question it. Like, if I go to a sale barn or something like that, I'd like to tell them, here's what's been happening. And to sign this does not mean that you're voting against it. It's that you're bringing it up for a vote.
Right, exactly. Even if you think your checkoff is the greatest thing ever happened, all we want is a vote for the first time in 35 years, and let's let the general population decide.
That brings up a really good point, Jim. If you go to the website checkoffvote.com, we have a file in there, and then it's also listed on the homepage of the 10 reasons to sign the checkoff, and Bill Bullard wrote those. So you can print that out to take around, the 10 reasons to sign, and it covers quite a few different checkoff issues. As well, there's media resources on there. There's 30-second PSA ads that you can shoot to your local radio station. There's print media ads that Jaden has already developed that you can shoot to your newspaper to put into your newspaper. So checkoffvote.com has education. It's got media resources. And you can also direct people to go sign the petition right there. And so if you've got kids or if you yourself are a texter on social media or whatever, shoot that checkoffvote.com website out to all the cattle producers that you know, and they can sign right there from their phone. And if there is ever an issue with the website or something's not loading, get a hold of us and at RCAF, and we'll look at things at the back end. We want everything running smoothly. Anybody else have a question? Oh, I walked away from the questions.
Karina, I got a couple over here.
Okay.
Okay. I could actually do this without a mic. I yell at kids across the arena all the time. But he knows. My question is there's a lot of online petitions these days, and you think you might have signed one, but you're not sure, and you talk about not wanting to duplicate signatures. Is there any way we can check for people to let them know if they did or did not sign this petition?
Karina, why don't you take over that? It's pretty tough. Go ahead.
I mean, not that we want everybody calling the office, but I think the office can help with that question if they are unsure if they've signed already. So and so in that moment, you won't be able to answer that. Please refer them, or you get a hold of us at RCAF, because that is a private data. We want to keep that secure. We can't just let it be all floating out there, and so that everybody can double check on their own. But that's a great question.
And have them sign the petition if they're not sure?
Yeah, that would probably be fine, and we can double check at the office.
Okay, I just don't want to miss a signature because somebody's not sure.
Okay, yep.
Okay.
Great question.
Will there be paper ballots available here at the convention that we can take home with us?
You read my mind. Absolutely. We've got piles of petitions out here, so feel free to grab any of those to take home, collect signatures on your way home as you head back home. Frank?
In the event that there are people who have double signed it, will they disqualify both signatures or just one?
I cannot answer that totally because I'm not at the USDA, but we're trying to prevent double signatures on our end, and we're not sure what the USDA, how they will vet the entire 90,000 signatures.
Just out of curiosity, how hard would it be to start our own checkoff to support the things that we believe in?
Great idea. I'll get on that next week. No. That's why we all got to keep talking.
One thing we might be able to do is if you got people that are like me, I can't remember whether I signed last year on the checkoff or not, put everybody that can't remember on a different sheet, and then put everybody that hasn't on a sheet. That way we're not messing too much stuff up.
Good intentions. George, you got another one?
So, I'm just kind of wondering, I'm pretty new to all this. I mean, I come up here because my mother-in-law wanted to come up here and such, and so nobody else wanted to drive with her, so here I am. But needless to say, well, no, that's not necessarily it. I wanted to come up here and see kind of what's going on, too. But I'm sitting here wondering, because I've never signed any one of these petitions whatsoever. But if my signature voids, if I sign twice, I sure as hell ain't going to sign another one. So kind of what she's getting at is if you've got a way to check that with some sort of a database, then you're not voiding a signature by getting an extra. And if that's what's happening, is if it's voiding, I mean, we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not having a way to somewhat check this. And with all the technology we have, I mean, it should be somewhat simple in a way.
Well, I know it would seem simple. The issue is the online signatures are collected through an online petition platform, and then the hard copy signatures are being inputted by our office into a different program to give to the USDA. And so actually the online signatures and the hard copies are in 2 different computer programs that don't talk to each other. So we're just do your due diligence, you know, and that's all we can ask for is best intentions and going forward. I've got a question right here.
Will there be a form here at the convention that we can all sign if we have not signed yet?
Yep, absolutely. Out here on the registration table, there's petitions to sign, to take home. There's also committee sign-ups that I talked about the other day. You can sign up to be on one of the Checkoff committee, marketing committee, trade, MCOOL, property rights committees at there.
That young man said almost everything I was going to say except attack my mother-in-law.
You quit digging my hole for me.
I'll have him put the shovel down here. Look, when you're using the written forms and they're not sure, have them sign, put an asterisk by it, and then when it gets to the office, the staff only has to go over the ones with the asterisk. You might be able to just scan those in, and there may be a way on the new software, even just for us dummies like me, to have the computer look for duplicates. So we can investigate that a little bit. Thank you.
$1 million idea. I like it.
Hey, Karina, I think maybe Dave has just stumbled onto something, so to speak. I don't know if he meant to or not, but I think he did.
I thought I had this in my phone, and I looked, and it was a receipt. When I signed online last year, they actually sent me a receipt that I signed it on Jot form.
Oh, yeah, they'll email you a receipt.
Yes,
That's
so
a
check
good
your
point.
computer.
Thank you.
What can those of us who belong to RCAF but do not own a cow do to help?
Educate and expand. Educate those cattle producers around you. And like I said, you can text that checkoffvote.com website to all the cattle producers that you know so they can sign it right there from their phone. Always be carrying the petitions with you.
If you run out of petitions, go to that Checkoff vote and you can download it right now to your printer, print up some copies, take them to your friends, your neighbors, your sale barns. And when you go out of here, I'd say starting today, whenever you have time, call 10 people that you know and inform them about this and tell them where they can get that petition and ask them to do the 10. Then don't forget about them. Come back tomorrow, next day, 2 days down the road. Ask them how it worked for them. Let them know. Because there's people like me that tend to procrastinate and put things off for a few days. So, you know, let's remind them again. Give them a second chance. Sorry to interrupt you there, Karina.
No, that's okay. Ronnie asked if there was something that she could sign as a non-cattle owner, and the answer is no. You had to have purchased. What? We could sell her a cow. Okay. Right. Anybody got a bottle calf for Ronnie?
I got some roped out rope and steers.
Okay. There we go. We're setting you up. You know, and so yeah, you have to have either purchased or sold cattle between July 2nd, 2020 and July 1, 2021.
Do you file jointly with somebody that does sell cattle? Okay, if you file jointly, you are considered, you know, part of that operation on there, and you can go ahead and both husband and wife can file on that.
So I've got an event coming up that we are a part of, and it ends on the 4th of October, and I believe that these signatures have to be in by the 3rd. Is that correct?
Yes.
So could I take something, or what kind of program do I need to pull up on a computer for these people that come to this big pasture open event to be able to sign a lot of this? Because they're a lot. I mean, everybody that comes to this is just a bunch of ranchers that are trying to help a benefit family.
Just get those signatures, you know, at the rope-in and get them sent to the Billings office as soon as possible. I believe we have 30 days to get the signatures into the USDA. So get, you know, collect, or they can sign online at checkoffvote.com. Yep.
Yeah, checkoffvote.com.
Brian Hansen has had iPads at his window at Fort Pierre Livestock. That has worked somewhat. You know, if you've got a phone, pass it around and they can sign on that.
Just to let you know that all of us people that are probably established and sell in a sale barn. We sold cattle in every grandchild's name last year, so they could sign up.
Genius. Genius.
You know that old saying, it takes a dog to know a dog.
Yeah, I really don't have a question. I just, kind of a recommendation here. If you're gonna wanna find out about the Checkoff and kind of light a fire under you, you know, read the book, A Buck Ahead. It goes clear back to 1920 when the first Checkoff, and it goes clear up to how NCBA basically took over. And A Buck Ahead, the book, and it'll really inform you. So give you a lot of good points to argue about.
If I might interrupt to kind of answer your question, and the gentleman over here wanted to know if I had a list of some of the ills that have happened. One of the greatest ills I've ever seen in my time on the Cattlemen's Beef Board is, are you all familiar with the Federation? The Federation came when they merged in 1996 from the Meat Packers Federation is what it was. And rather than throw it out, they gave them the control over all your state beef councils. It is the biggest pay-to-play scheme that I've ever seen. David Wright, if he's in here, said that even Al Capone would be proud of that scheme. The states have to pay close to, I think it's 15,000 roughly, plus or minus, for the first seat, and it goes on up sharply to 300,000 on some of the last seats on there. When I was on the South Dakota Beef Council, we were paying over 600,000 to them every year for I think 6 seats roughly on that deal. We finally got it trimmed down and made an agreement with them. We'd take half that money and go to the New England initiative over there and New York and Pennsylvania directly. So we got some of that money back. But that money is collected about currently I think this year $8 million. It's been as high as 10 million. Things are kind of going down a little. And the Federation supposedly uses that money to invest into your ARs, the authorization requests and that. If you look on the authorization requests on there, it shows just everybody that donates into there besides your Checkoff. And the Federation, all the time I was on that thing, was probably investing around $300,000 to $350,000 a year out of their 8 to 10 million on that thing. That has caught on. About 2 years ago, they put in $3 million. This year, it's $6 million. So you think, well, they're doing pretty good. But then you go to the little asterisk, and you go to the bottom of the page. It says those funds will be invested as needed by the NCBA operating committee, or not the operating committee, executive committee. And you'll never know if that got invested in there. Once that money is over on the other side, it can be used for lobbying, because a lot of that was implementation fees and stuff like that. That's why they had the 46.7% of implementation fees for the 2020 ARs went to them. And I can't remember the figure, but it's around, they got over $37 million on there. So if you figure that out, they had quite a bit to put over on their side. You know, when they're bragging about that big new building in Washington, D.C., with the big deck out there where they can entertain, and then $120,000 checks or 120 individual checks that they sent to congressmen and stuff over the year. Your Checkoff paid for an awful lot of that. You can bet it's paying for every party that's held on that thing. Am I running over?
No. Anything else you have to add?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll let you.
All right, so the marathon is behind us, and now it's a sprint these next 45 days to October 3rd, okay? And so collect those signatures right up until October 3rd, and then get them sent into the office at Billings as soon as possible.